The text came through at 6:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, right as I was washing concrete dust off my hands in the porta-john at the Henderson construction site. My phone buzzed against my tool belt, and I almost ignored it. After 16 hours of pouring foundation, all I wanted was a beer and my recliner. But something made me look. My lover changed the locks. You're out. Let's see how tough you are now, haha. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I stared at Diana's message for a full 30 seconds, watching raindrops spatter the cracked screen of my phone. 23 years of marriage, and this is how she tells me it's over. Not even the decency of a phone call. My name is Patrick Owen, and I'm 55 years old. I've been swinging hammers and reading blueprints since I was 17, worked my way up from grunt laborer to site foreman for McKenzie Construction. I'm not what you'd call book smart, but I know how to read people, and I know when I'm being played. The drive home to Millbrook took 40 minutes through Maine's October drizzle. Our house, my house, sat on Elm Street like a postcard from better times. White colonial, black shutters, the kind of place where normal couples grow old together. But as I pulled into the driveway, I knew normal was officially over. My toolbox sat in the middle of the front lawn, soaked through. My clothes were scattered across the wet grass like some twisted yard sale. 23 years of my life dumped out for the neighbors to see. Diana stood in the doorway, arms crossed, wearing that smug expression I'd grown to hate. Next to her was Theodore West, Theo to his friends, though I'd never counted myself among them. 50 years old, soft around the middle, wearing a suit that probably cost more than I made in a month. The town's most successful real estate attorney, and apparently my wife's new boyfriend. "Patrick," Diana called out, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "I left your things outside. Seemed easier this way." I climbed out of my truck slowly, letting the rain soak into my work shirt. "Easier for who, Di?" "For everyone." Theo stepped forward, puffing out his chest like some kind of suburban peacock. "Diana's made her choice, Owen. Time to accept reality." I looked at him. Really looked. Theo West, who'd never worked a day of manual labor in his life, whose biggest physical challenge was opening wine bottles at the country club. This was the man my wife had chosen over me. "Reality," I repeated, nodding slowly. "Yeah, Theo, let's talk about reality." But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I started gathering my scattered belongings piece by piece while they watched from the doorway. My old work boots, my lucky flannel shirt, the photo of my daughter Rena from her college graduation. Everything important to me, treated like garbage. "You should have seen this coming," Theo said, unable to keep the smugness out of his voice. "A woman like Diana needs more than a blue-collar paycheck can provide." I straightened up, holding my soaked toolbox. "You're probably right, Theo. I never was smart enough for Diana." Diana laughed. Actually laughed. Finally, some honesty. I loaded my truck in silence while they watched. When I was done, I walked back to where they stood in the doorway, close enough to smell Theo's expensive cologne. "Just so we're clear," I said quietly, "you two are living in this house now?" "That's right," Diana said. "Theo's taking care of the mortgage, something you never could handle properly." I nodded, as if accepting defeat. "Well then, guess you've got it all figured out." I turned and walked back to my truck, ignoring Theo's parting shot about how I should find somewhere more appropriate to my station in life. But as I drove away, I pulled out my phone and sent a text to my daughter. Phase 1 complete. Time to show them what this old dog can really do. Because here's what Diana and her lawyer boyfriend didn't know. I may not be book smart, but I'm not stupid. And 5 years ago, when Diana first started talking about divorce, I'd made some very careful arrangements with the mortgage on our house. arrangements that a smart real estate attorney should have caught. But Theo was about to learn that being smart and being thorough are two very different things. My backup apartment was a one-bedroom dump above Flanagan's hardware store on Main Street. I'd been paying rent on it for 3 years, ever since Diana's first affair, the one with her pharmaceutical sales manager that she thought I didn't know about. Call it insurance or paranoia, but it had always felt like a storm shelter. Now the storm was here. I dropped my toolbox on the scarred kitchen table and cracked open a beer. Outside, the October rain hammered against the single window, and I could hear the usual crowd gathering at Murphy's pub down the street. Tuesday night was karaoke night, which meant half the town would be drunk and gossipy by 9 o'clock. Perfect. My phone rang. Rena. Dad, I got your text. Are you okay? Rena was 25, smart as hell, and worked in IT for a Portland marketing firm. She'd inherited my stubborn streak and her mother's sharp tongue, but unlike Diana, she'd never forgotten where she came from. I'm fine, sweetheart. Better than fine, actually. Mom really kicked you out? Your mother and her new boyfriend changed the locks, but that's okay. I've been planning for this day for a while now. Silence on the other end. Then, Dad, what did you do? I took a long pull of beer and smiled. Remember when your mother insisted we refinance the house 5 years ago? She wanted money for that kitchen renovation that never happened? Yeah, you guys fought about it for weeks. Well, I agreed to the refinance, but I made a few changes to the paperwork that Diana never bothered to read. See, instead of a standard residential mortgage, I structured it as a commercial loan with what they call a poison pill clause. In English, Dad, if I'm removed from the deed or prevented from residing in the property, the full balance becomes immediately due, not in 30 years, in 30 days, at 18% interest. Another silence, longer this time. Dad, how much do they owe? $240,000, plus the interest penalty. Your mother and her boyfriend have exactly 28 days to come up with about $300,000, or the bank forecloses. Holy shit. Language, Rena. Dad, this is brilliant. And completely legal? Completely legal. Theo should have caught it when he moved in, but I guess he was too busy playing house to do his homework. We talked for another hour, working out the details. Rena would monitor Diana's social media and keep me informed about their panic level. She'd also help me gather some additional ammunition, Diana's nasty text messages, photos of her with Theo at expensive restaurants while I was working overtime to pay the bills. There's one more thing, I said. I need you to call your Uncle Kenny. Kenny Morrison was my oldest friend, a former repo man who now ran a small towing company. He was also the kind of guy who enjoyed watching entitled people get their comeuppance. What do you need Uncle Kenny for? Let's just say Theo's gonna need some help with his transportation situation. After Rena hung up, I walked down to Murphy's pub. The place was packed, as expected, and the karaoke was in full swing. I found my usual spot at the bar and ordered a whiskey. Patrick! Ellen Murphy, the owner's wife and the town's unofficial news network, waved me over. Heard you had some excitement at home today. Word traveled fast in Millbrook. Nothing I can't handle, Ellen. That lawyer fellow, West, he's been sniffing around Diana for months. Everyone knew about it except you, apparently. I raised my glass. Well, now I know too. What are you going to do about it? I smiled and took a sip of whiskey. Nothing illegal, Ellen. But Theo's about to learn that there's a difference between book smart and street smart. The conversation was interrupted by a commotion near the door. 3 of my former drinking buddies, Mike Sullivan, Tom Bradley, and Jeff Chen, had just walked in. These were guys I'd known for 20 years, played poker with every Friday night, helped move furniture and fix cars. But the moment they saw me, their expressions changed. Mike approached first, his face hard. Patrick. Mike, boys. I nodded to Tom and Jeff. Didn't expect to see you here tonight. We heard about what happened, Tom said. With Diana. News travels fast. Look, Patrick. Jeff stepped forward. We've been talking, and we think maybe it's time you accepted that your marriage is over. Diana's moved on. Maybe you should too. I studied their faces, seeing something I'd never noticed before. The way they avoided eye contact, the defensive set of their shoulders. Funny thing, I said slowly. You boys seem to know an awful lot about my wife's business. Mike's face reddened. You're just saying that I should roll over and let Theo West take everything I've worked for. Is that it? Diana deserves to be happy, Tom said. And if that means being with someone who can provide for her properly. Someone like Theo. Yeah, someone like Theo. I finished my whiskey and stood up. The entire bar had gone quiet, everyone listening to our conversation. Let me ask you something, boys. How long have you known about Diana's affair? The three of them exchanged glances. Mike cleared his throat. Patrick, don't make this harder than it has to be. Answer the question. 6 months, Jeff said quietly. Maybe more. 6 months, I nodded. And in all that time, none of you thought to mention it to me. We didn't want to hurt you, Tom said. But you were perfectly fine letting me work overtime to pay for a house my wife was sharing with another man. Patrick, get out of my sight. Mike stepped closer, his voice dropping to a growl. You don't get to talk to us like that. We were trying to protect you from embarrassment. Embarrassment. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You mean like the embarrassment of finding my clothes scattered across my front lawn while the whole neighborhood watched? That's Diana's doing, not ours. No, Mike. Diana's a cheating wife. But you three are supposed to be my friends. There's a difference. The tension in the bar was thick enough to cut. Ellen Murphy had stopped serving drinks, and even the karaoke machine had gone silent. Maybe we made a mistake, Tom said. But Diana's right about one thing. You need to face reality. Theo West is successful, educated, established. What do you have to offer? I smiled then, the kind of smile that made smart people nervous. You want to know what I have to offer? Stick around, boys. You're about to find out. I threw a 20 on the bar and walked toward the door, but as I passed Mike Sullivan, I stopped and leaned in close. By the way, Mike, you might want to call your wife and ask her where she was last Tuesday afternoon. I saw her car parked outside the Riverside Motel around 2 o'clock. Funny thing is, you were at work. Mike's face went white. What are you saying? I'm saying everyone in this town has secrets, Mike, and I've got a real good memory. I left them standing there and walked out into the rain. Phase 2 was about to begin. The next morning, I was on the Henderson job site by 6 a.m., same as always. But instead of diving into work, I spent the first hour making phone calls. The first was to my lawyer, Harold Gold, a thin, methodical man who specialized in property law and had the personality of a tax audit. Patrick, I've been expecting your call. I assume the mortgage situation has activated? 27 days and counting, Harold. Has anyone from West's office contacted you? Not yet, but they will. And when they do, I'll refer them to the loan documents they should have reviewed before your wife's boyfriend moved in. What if they try to negotiate? Then they'll discover that the loan terms are non-negotiable. The poison pill clause is ironclad. They pay in full, or the bank forecloses. No payment plans, no extensions. I hung up feeling better than I had in months, but the real satisfaction came an hour later when Kenny Morrison showed up at the job site driving his tow truck. Kenny was built like a beer barrel with arms, 53 years old, and proud of every gray hair he'd earned. He'd been repossessing cars and trucks for 20 years before starting his own towing company, and he had a particular talent for creative problem-solving. Heard you need some help with a vehicle situation, he said, climbing out of his truck with a grin. Theo West drives a 2019 Jaguar F-Type, silver. License plate reads, Lawman 1. Kenny snorted. Subtle, where's he park it? Usually in front of my house, but I'm thinking we might catch him at the country club tonight. He plays poker there every Wednesday. What did you have in mind? I pulled out my phone and showed Kenny a photo Rena had sent me. Theo's Jaguar parked in a handicapped space outside an expensive restaurant. No handicapped tag visible. "This was taken last week," I said. "Seems like Theo has a problem following parking regulations." Kenny studied the photo. "You know, Patrick, I've got a contract with the county to remove illegally parked vehicles from public spaces, and the country club parking lot is technically county property." "Is it really?" "Oh, yes. And if someone were to say, call in a complaint about a vehicle parked illegally, I'd be obligated to respond." "Even at night?" "Especially at night. County pays overtime for emergency removals." We shook hands, and Kenny drove off, whistling. I spent the rest of the day working with unusual enthusiasm, knowing that Theo's evening was about to take an interesting turn. At 7 p.m., I was sitting in my truck across from the Millbrook Country Club when Theo's Jaguar pulled into the parking lot. He climbed out wearing golf clothes and carrying what looked like a leather poker case. Arrogant bastard probably thought he was living in a movie. I waited until he was inside, then called Kenny. "He's here. Silver Jaguar parked in the fire lane." "Fire lane? That's even better than handicapped. I'll be there in 20 minutes. While I waited, I called Rena. "How's our intelligence gathering going?" "Mom's been posting on Facebook all day. Pictures of her and Theo at expensive restaurants, bragging about her new life and how she's finally with a real man. It's pretty gross, Dad." "What about the mortgage situation?" "No panic yet. I don't think they've been contacted by the bank." "They will be. Tomorrow, probably." 20 minutes later, Kenny's tow truck pulled into the country club parking lot. I watched him attach the chains to Theo's Jaguar with professional efficiency. The whole operation took less than 5 minutes. My phone rang just as Kenny was driving away with Theo's car. "Patrick?" It was Ellen Murphy. "You need to get down to the pub now." "What's wrong?" "Your wife's here, with her boyfriend, and she's running her mouth about you to anyone who'll listen." I drove to Murphy's pub faster than I should have, but the rain had stopped and the streets were empty. Inside, the usual Wednesday night crowd was gathered around the bar, but the atmosphere was tense. Diana sat at a corner table with Theo, and even from across the room, I could see she was drunk. "There he is," Diana's voice cut through the conversation like a rusty knife. "My ex-husband, everybody, the man who couldn't keep his wife satisfied." The entire bar went quiet. I walked to the bar and ordered a beer, ignoring the stares. "You know what Patrick's problem is?" Diana continued, her voice getting louder. "No ambition, no class. 23 years I wasted on a man who'll never be more than a construction worker." "Diana," Theo said quietly, "maybe we should go." "No, I want everyone to know. Patrick Owen is a loser. Always has been, always will be. Thank God I found a real man." I turned around slowly, beer in hand, and looked at her. Really looked. Diana was 48, still attractive in a high-maintenance way, but the alcohol and anger had twisted her features into something ugly. "You done?" I asked. "I'm just getting started. You want to know what your precious husband is really like?" She addressed the room like she was giving a speech. "He's boring, he's cheap, and he's absolutely terrible in—" "Diana," my voice cut through hers like a blade. "Shut up." The bar went silent. Diana's mouth fell open in shock. "You want to air our dirty laundry in public? Fine. Let's talk about dirty laundry." I walked closer to their table. "Let's talk about how you've been cheating on me for years. Let's talk about how you spent our anniversary in a motel with your sales manager while I was working a double shift to pay for your credit card bills." Diana's face went white. "How did you—" "Let's talk about how you convinced me to refinance our house so you could steal the equity and run off with your lawyer boyfriend here." "Patrick," Theo stood up, trying to look intimidating. "That's enough." "Is it, Theo? Because I'm just getting started." I smiled at him. "By the way, how's your car situation working out?" Theo's face went from confident to confused. My car? Silver Jaguar, license plate Lawman 1. You might want to check the parking lot. Theo rushed outside, and we all heard his shout of rage from the street. When he came back in, his face was red with fury. You snake! You had my car towed! I didn't have your car towed, Theo. The county had your car towed. For illegal parking. But hey, I'm sure a smart lawyer like you can get it back without any problem. This is harassment. No, this is consequences. Something you're going to be learning a lot about over the next 26 days. Diana stood up, swaying slightly. 26 days? What are you talking about? I finished my beer and set the empty bottle on their table. Ask your boyfriend. He's the real estate expert. As I walked toward the door, I heard Theo explaining to Diana about the mortgage situation. Her shriek of rage followed me out into the parking lot, along with the laughter of half the bar. But the best part came the next morning, when Ellen Murphy called to tell me that Diana and Theo had spent 2 hours at the county impound lot, arguing with Kenny about the towing fee. Your friend Kenny told them it would be $400 to get the car back, Ellen said, barely containing her laughter, plus storage fees for every day it sits there. And? Theo threw such a fit that Kenny called the police. Apparently, threatening a county contractor is a misdemeanor. I hung up the phone and smiled. 25 days to go. The Millbrook Harvest Festival was a town tradition dating back 40 years. Every October, Main Street was closed to traffic and filled with food vendors, craft booths, and carnival rides. It was the kind of small-town event where everyone showed up, from the mayor to the high school kids looking for somewhere to hang out. It was also the perfect place for a public confrontation. I'd spent the morning helping set up the beer tent for the volunteer fire department, another tradition, and one that let me keep an eye on the crowd. By noon, the festival was in full swing, and I'd already spotted Diana and Theo near the craft booths, trying to look like a happy couple. But their body language told a different story. Diana kept checking her phone, her face getting more pinched with each text or call. Theo looked like a man who'd been sleeping badly, which made sense considering they'd received the official foreclosure notice yesterday morning. Rena found me at the beer tent around 1 o'clock, carrying a funnel cake and grinning like she'd won the lottery. Dad, you need to see this. She pulled out her phone and showed me a screenshot of Diana's Facebook page. Mom posted this an hour ago. The post was a long, rambling rant about vindictive ex-husbands and legal harassment. Diana had apparently decided that her best defense was to play the victim publicly, painting me as an abusive husband who was trying to destroy her new relationship. Look at the comments, Rena said. I scrolled through the responses, and my smile got wider with each one. Instead of sympathy, Diana was getting roasted by half the town. People who'd known us for years were calling her out, sharing their own stories about her entitled behavior and obvious affairs. Mrs. Patterson from the grocery store posted a whole story about Mom trying to return spoiled meat she'd bought 3 weeks earlier, Rena said. And Mr. Kowalski from the hardware store shared the time Mom screamed at his teenage cashier for not accepting an expired coupon. Your mother never was good at making friends. It gets better. Look at this. Rena showed me another screenshot, this one from the Millbrook Community Facebook group. Someone had posted a photo of Theo's Jaguar being towed from the country club, along with the caption, "Even lawyers have to follow parking laws." The post had 67 comments, most of them laughing at Theo's expense. Dad, I think you're winning. But the real victory came an hour later, when Diana decided to confront me directly. I was manning the beer tent when she approached, Theo trailing behind her like a nervous puppy. She'd been drinking. I could smell the wine from 3 feet away, and her carefully applied makeup couldn't hide the stress lines around her eyes. Patrick. Her voice was loud enough to carry to the nearby booths. We need to talk. Do we? I continued filling plastic cups with beer for the line of customers. I thought we covered everything at Murphy's the other night. This mortgage thing is ridiculous. You can't just throw us out of our home. It's not your home, Diana. It's my home. You're just squatting in it. Theo stepped forward, trying to look authoritative despite his wrinkled clothes and unshaven face. Patrick, we're prepared to make you a reasonable offer. Are you? I handed a beer to Mrs. Patterson from the grocery store, who was watching the confrontation with obvious interest. What kind of offer? We'll buy out your interest in the house. Fair market value, minus the outstanding mortgage balance. I laughed. Theo, you do realize the outstanding mortgage balance is about to be $300,000, right? And the house is worth maybe $250,000 on a good day? His face went pale. That's not. The penalty interest can't be that high. 18%. Compounded daily. It's all in the loan documents you should have read before you moved in. Diana grabbed my arm, her fingernails digging into my skin. You can't do this to us. I looked down at her hand, then back at her face. Let go of me, Diana. Not until you agree to be reasonable. The crowd around us was growing larger, drawn by the raised voices and obvious drama. I could see people pulling out their phones, recording the confrontation. Diana, I said quietly, you have 3 seconds to let go of my arm. Or what? I didn't answer. Instead, I reached under the beer tent counter and pulled out the folder Rena had prepared for me. Inside were printouts of Diana's text messages, photos of her with Theo at expensive restaurants, and copies of credit card statements showing thousands of dollars in charges at jewelry stores and high-end boutiques. Or I start sharing some interesting documents with our neighbors. Diana's grip loosened. What documents? I pulled out the first photo, Diana and Theo kissing in the parking lot of the Riverside Motel taken 6 months ago. This one's my personal favorite. Where did you get that? Turns out you're not as sneaky as you thought. I held up another photo. This one shows Theo's car parked at our house last Christmas Eve while I was working overtime at the Henderson site. Remember that night, Diana? You told me you had the flu. Theo grabbed for the photos, but I pulled them back. Careful, Theo. Assault in front of 50 witnesses probably isn't good for your legal career. You bastard, Diana hissed. You've been spying on us. I've been protecting myself. There's a difference. I looked around at the crowd of onlookers. Anyone here want to see what Diana Owen really thinks of this town? I've got some interesting text messages. Don't you dare! But I was already pulling out my phone, scrolling to the screenshots Rena had saved. Here's a good one. Diana texting her sister about how she can't wait to get away from these small-town idiots and their pathetic little lives. A murmur went through the crowd. Mrs. Patterson's face hardened, and I saw several other neighbors exchange angry glances. Or how about this one? I continued. Diana explaining to Theo how she's been faking interest in local events for years and can't stand pretending to care about these people's boring problems. Stop it! Diana lunged for my phone, but I stepped aside and she stumbled, nearly falling into the beer tent. The crowd erupted in laughter and jeers. Someone shouted, "Way to go, Patrick!" And several people started applauding. Theo tried to grab Diana's arm and pull her away, but she shook him off. You think you're so smart, she screamed at me. You think you've won something, but you're still just a construction worker. You'll always be nothing. I looked at her for a long moment, then smiled. Maybe. But in 23 days, I'll be a construction worker who owns a house, and you'll be nothing but a homeless cheater with a disbarred boyfriend. Disbarred? Theo's voice cracked. What are you talking about? Oh, didn't I mention? I filed a complaint with the State Bar Association yesterday. Seems like moving in with a married woman and attempting to defraud her husband out of his property interest might be considered unethical conduct. Theo's face went white. You can't prove fraud. Can't I? I pulled out another document. This is a copy of the deed transfer you filed last week, trying to remove my name from the property title. Too bad you didn't have my signature or Diana's power of attorney. That was just You were trying to steal my house. In legal terms, that's called attempted fraud. In regular terms, it's called being a dumbass. The crowd was loving every minute of it. Diana looked around at the laughing faces, her own face twisted with rage and humiliation. "I hate you," she whispered. "I hate all of you." "The feeling's mutual, sweetheart." Diana raised her hand to slap me, but I caught her wrist easily. "I wouldn't," I said quietly. "Not in front of all these witnesses." She tried to pull away, but I held her wrist firmly, not hurting her, but making it clear who was in control. "Let me go." "When you calm down." "Let me go." I released her wrist, and she stumbled backward into Theo, who barely managed to keep her upright. 23 days, Diana. Better start looking for an apartment." As they pushed through the crowd and disappeared down Main Street, the people around the beer tent broke into spontaneous applause. Mrs. Patterson stepped forward and handed me a $20 bill. "That beer's on me, Patrick, and that show was worth every penny." I spent the rest of the festival accepting congratulations and free drinks from half the town. By evening, I was feeling better than I had in years. But the best part came the next morning, when Ellen Murphy called with the latest gossip. "Patrick, you're not going to believe this. Diana and Theo got into a screaming match in the Walmart parking lot last night. She blamed him for the mortgage mess. He blamed her for not reading the documents, and it ended with her throwing his golf clubs into the storm drain." "No kidding?" "Gets better. Theo's been sleeping in his office since Wednesday. Apparently, Diana changed the locks on him too." I hung up the phone and smiled. 22 days to go, and my enemies were already destroying each other. Sometimes the best revenge is just getting out of the way and letting people show their true colors. The foreclosure auction was scheduled for a gray Thursday morning in late October, exactly 30 days after Diana's mocking text message. I'd been counting down the days like a kid waiting for Christmas, and now the moment had finally arrived. The auction was held on the courthouse steps, a piece of legal theater that drew a surprisingly large crowd. Word had spread through Millbrook about the Owen Wells West drama, and it seemed like half the town had shown up to watch the finale. I arrived early, wearing my best suit, the same one I'd worn to Rena's college graduation. Harold Gold stood beside me with his briefcase full of legal documents, looking like an undertaker at a funeral, which, in a way, he was. "Everything's in order," Harold said quietly. "The bank confirmed the full balance is due today, including penalty interest. Total amount, $312,467. And if they can't pay? Then the property goes to auction. Minimum bid starts at the outstanding loan balance." I smiled. "And I'm the only one pre-approved for financing." "Correct. Your construction company's credit line with First National covers the full amount." At exactly 10 a.m., Diana and Theo arrived in his battered Jaguar. The car looked like it had been through a war, dented bumper, cracked windshield, and a rear window held together with duct tape. Apparently, Diana's temper tantrum in the Walmart parking lot had been even more destructive than Ellen Murphy had reported. They climbed out of the car and approached the courthouse steps, both looking like they'd aged 10 years in the past month. Diana's usually perfect hair was unwashed and pulled back in a messy ponytail. Theo's expensive suit was wrinkled and stained, and he had the hollow-eyed look of a man who'd been sleeping in his office. "Patrick," Theo's voice was hoarse, "we need to talk. Do we? We can settle this, right now, before the auction." I looked at Harold, who shrugged. "They're welcome to pay the full balance due, cash or certified check." Diana stepped forward, her face desperate. "Patrick, please, we can work something out. I'll give you a divorce, no contest. You can keep the house." "I'm keeping the house anyway, Diana." "But we don't have $300,000. "I know." Theo pulled out a manila folder. "We've been in contact with several lenders. We can get a bridge loan, pay off the current mortgage, and refinance at a reasonable rate." Harold examined the documents Theo handed him, then shook his head. "These are pre-approval letters, not actual loan commitments, and they're all contingent on property appraisal and title review. So? So the property is being foreclosed on today. No lender will close a loan on a property that's already in foreclosure proceedings. Theo's face crumpled. There has to be something. There is, I said. You can bid at the auction, if you've got $312,000 in cash. The crowd around us had grown larger, drawn by the drama playing out on the courthouse steps. I could see my old drinking buddies, Mike Sullivan, Tom Bradley, and Jeff Chen, standing near the back, watching with uncomfortable expressions. At exactly 10:15, the auctioneer called the proceedings to order. Ladies and gentlemen, we're here today to conduct a foreclosure auction for the property located at 247 Elm Street, Millbrook, Maine. The minimum bid is $312,467. Do I have any bidders? I raised my hand. $312,467. Do I hear 315? Silence. 313? More silence. Diana looked around desperately. Someone bid, please, anyone. But who was going to bid over $300,000 for a house worth maybe $250,000? The crowd just stared at her with a mixture of pity and amusement. Going once, the auctioneer called. Going twice. Wait! Diana screamed. This isn't legal. He can't just steal our house. Harold Gold stepped forward. Mrs. Wells, the foreclosure is completely legal. Your husband structured the mortgage with specific terms that have now been triggered. If you'd like to challenge the proceedings, you're welcome to file an appeal. How long would an appeal take? Theo asked desperately. 18 to 24 months. Of course, you'd need to post a bond equal to the full mortgage balance while the appeal is pending. Theo's shoulders sagged in defeat. Sold, the auctioneer announced, to Patrick Owen for $312,467. The crowd erupted in applause. I shook hands with the auctioneer and Harold Gold, officially becoming the sole owner of my own house again. But I wasn't done yet. Ladies and gentlemen, I called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. I'd like to make an announcement. The crowd quieted down, sensing that the show wasn't over. As the new owner of 247 Elm Street, I'm hereby giving notice to the current occupants that they have 24 hours to vacate the premises. Any personal property left behind will be considered abandoned and disposed of accordingly. Diana's face went white. You can't just throw us out. Actually, I can. It's called eviction, and it's perfectly legal when someone's living in your house without permission. But where are we supposed to go? I shrugged. Not my problem, Diana. Maybe you should have thought about that before you changed the locks. Theo tried one last desperate gambit. Patrick, I'll pay you rent. Fair market value. We just need time to find another place. How much rent were you planning to pay? $2,000 a month? I pretended to consider it. $2,000 a month for a 3-bedroom house in Millbrook? That seems low. $2,500? Harold, what's fair market rent for a house like mine? Harold consulted his phone. Based on comparable properties, I'd estimate $3,500 to $4,000 per month. $4,000 it is, I said. First month, last month, and security deposit up front. That's $12,000, cash, today. Theo's face fell. We don't have $12,000. Then you don't have a place to live. As the crowd began to disperse, I noticed Mike Sullivan approaching. He looked uncomfortable, like a man who wanted to apologize but didn't know how to start. Patrick, can we talk? What about, Mike? About what happened at Murphy's. About us not telling you about Diana's affair. I looked at him for a long moment. You mean about how you chose her side over mine? We didn't choose sides. We thought it would be easier if you didn't know. Easier for who? Mike didn't have an answer for that. You know what the funny thing is, Mike? I don't even care about Diana's affair. People cheat. It happens. But you three were supposed to be my friends, And when I needed you most, you stabbed me in the back. We were trying to protect you. No, you were protecting yourselves. You didn't want to deal with the mess, so you decided to let me be the fool who didn't know his wife was screwing around. Tom Bradley and Jeff Chen had joined us, both looking equally uncomfortable. "Patrick," Tom said, "we're sorry. We should have told you." "Yeah, you should have. But you didn't. And now we all have to live with the consequences." "What consequences?" Jeff asked. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Well, Jeff, let's see. Mike, your wife Sarah has been having lunch with her personal trainer twice a week for the past 6 months. Tom, your son Danny got arrested for selling pot behind the high school last month, but the charges were dropped because his dealer was the police chief's nephew. And Jeff, your brother-in-law has been skimming money from your construction company for 2 years. All 3 men went pale. How do I know? Because I pay attention, Mike. Because I listen when people talk, and because I remember everything. You're going to tell people? I'm not going to tell anyone anything, but I'm also not going to forget. And if any of you ever cross me again, well, let's just say I've learned a lot about consequences lately. I walked away, leaving them standing there in stunned silence. The final act came that evening, when Kenny Morrison and I drove to Elm Street to make sure Diana and Theo were packing. We found them loading boxes into a U-Haul truck, both looking defeated and exhausted. "Need any help?" I called out cheerfully. Diana looked up from the box she was carrying, her face streaked with tears. "Are you here to gloat?" "Actually, I'm here to make sure you don't steal anything that belongs to me." "We're not stealing anything." "Good. Then you won't mind if I check the truck." I walked over to the U-Haul and looked inside. Most of the boxes contained clothes and personal items, but I spotted something interesting near the back. "Theo, is that my toolbox?" Theo's face reddened. You left it here." "I left it here because this is my house, and that's where I keep my tools." I reached into the truck and pulled out my toolbox. "Anything else in here that belongs to me?" A quick search revealed my fishing gear, my collection of vintage beer signs, and even my lucky work boots. "Seriously?" I looked at both of them with disgust. "You were going to steal my stuff?" "We weren't stealing," Diana said weakly. "We just thought—" "You thought wrong." As I loaded my belongings into Kenny's truck, Diana made one last attempt at reconciliation. "Patrick, I know you hate me, but we were married for 23 years. Doesn't that mean anything to you?" I stopped and looked at her. Really looked at her. The woman I'd married, had a child with, built a life with. The woman who'd thrown it all away for a mediocre lawyer with an expensive car. It meant everything to me, Diana. That's why this hurts so much. Then why are you doing this to us? Because you did it to me first. The only difference is I'm better at it than you are. They finished loading the truck in silence. As they prepared to drive away, Theo rolled down his window. "This isn't over, Patrick." I smiled. "Yes, it is, Theo. You just don't know it yet." The U-Haul disappeared down Elm Street, taking my cheating wife and her loser boyfriend out of my life forever. I stood in the driveway of my house, and pulled out my phone to call Rena. "It's over, sweetheart. They're gone." "How do you feel, Dad?" I looked up at the house where I'd planned to grow old with Diana, where I'd raised my daughter, where I'd built a life that seemed solid and permanent. Now it was just mine again, empty, but clean. I feel like I just took out the trash. 3 months later, I got a Christmas card from Diana. She and Theo had moved to Florida, where he was working as a paralegal for a personal injury firm. She'd taken a job selling insurance and was living in a 1-bedroom apartment in Clearwater. The card had a note inside. "I hope you're happy now." I was.